Hear, O Israel, the Lord is a God, the Lord is one. The most famous of all the Sabbath prayers, however, is a Sabbath prayer called Lecha Dodi. Come, my beloved, let us go together to welcome the Sabbath bride. You know, I said before that Judaism conceives of men and women in a linear and a cyclical fashion. It's linear divine energy and a more circular divine energy. So the Sabbath is the feminine aspect of the week. It's much more, it's feminine passive as opposed to masculine aggressive. Meaning, it's a time to enjoy and create community and create family and strengthen relationships. One of the problems in our world today, I've always argued, is that there isn't enough of the feminine. There's too much of the masculine. I live near New York City where it's so darn masculine and so darn aggressive. And you don't really have a lot of time, downtime. Everything is always moving. John Lennon, who spent the last 10 years of his life in New York and was killed outside the Dakota on 72nd and Central Park West, famously said that when he grew up in Liverpool, there was always something in the background of his house. It was a fireplace. It gave warmth, something very feminine. Crackling sound. It was soothing. So when he came to the States, what was always on in the background, what replaced the fireplace was a television. Just this noise coming out day and night. This noise. So it's very hard for us to find serenity and peace. That serenity and peace is captured in the feminine side of the week, which is the Sabbath. So this song, Lecha Dodi Likad Kala Panei Shabbat Nekabala, has anyone heard this before? Yeah. Come, my beloved, let us welcome the Shabbos Queen, originating here in Tzfat. It was so the Kabbalists used to put on all white, and when you go to the Kotel on Friday, you will see that while the Hasidim wear black colors, the Kabbalists wear white. They wear all white, and they would don this white representing purity, and they would go out, and as the sun set, they would welcome the Shabbos Queen. It was written here in the city of Tzfat by Rabbi Shlomo al-Kavatz, who was one of the great mystics. Again, there's all these mystical people who came and congregated together and made Tzfat the Kabbalistic capital of the world. As we were walking through the alleyways, you no doubt saw so many people advertising different courses on Kabbalah. Now, one of the second most famous concept of the Kabbalah, worth remembering, is something called tzimtzum, which means contraction. Let me just explain what that means. I'm a father of 9 kids. So if I want, each child has to be addressed in a different way. Our 22-year-old, who's now engaged, she has to be given greater independence, even though she and her fiance and eventual husband will be forced to live in our home because I didn't have kids to abandon me. They're going to have to take care of me when drool is coming out of my mouth later in life. So I address my 22-year-old in one way. We have a 20-year-old who moved here to Israel. She's the one who's joining the army. She has to be addressed in a different way. As you go down the spectrum, our 13-year-old, our 10-year-old, our 5-year-old, we have a 3-year-old. A person, in order to have relationships, has to contract themselves to meet the receptacle, the object of your affection. If there is no form of contraction, then you can't have a relationship. Take, for example, sexual fidelity in a relationship. In all the debates that I have with some of the world's leading atheists, they always point out that men are not programmed to be naturally monogamous. They always point out that men are essentially inseminators who seek the widest possible distribution of their gene pool. And this has been used to defend a culture of non-faithfulness. And yet, that's a ridiculous argument. Whatever your nature is, you have to contract it to focus it on a specific target. Otherwise, you can't have a relationship. So Kabbalah talks about this idea of contraction, this idea of tzimtzum, that in order for the infinite God to interact with his finite world, he has to contract himself in order to speak to prophets, in order to inspire us on a daily basis. I mean, the fact is, when you see something that's truly beautiful, like a natural phenomenon, I don't know, a sunset or a snow-capped mountain peak, there's something divine in it. You feel a majestic quality to it. It's something ethereal. And it makes you feel uplifted. It's actually quite inspiring. That's why we love getting away from the cities and into nature. About 250 years ago, there was a famous French philosopher named Jean-Jacques Rousseau who argued that human beings had become corrupted by civilization. From him comes 2 famous expressions that have entered the vernacular. One is the social contract, which is his most famous book, and the other was the noble savage. We Americans, white Europeans, not the Jews, hopefully, because we faced our own persecutions, but white Europeans came to the United States, North America, and they decimated the native population thinking they were barbarians, thinking that they had no noble qualities. But Jean-Jacques Rousseau spoke about the noble savage. The people who lived in nature actually were not as corrupted by civilization the way we are. But that concept really started here in Tzfat. The Kabbalists wanted to get away from the corrosive influences of civilization to something that was far more natural. And they felt they could meditate more, that they could be more in tune with the divine by being... And it's amazing that all these hundreds of years later, Tzfat really has retained that quality. You're not going to feel this way when you're in Tel Aviv. You're not going to feel this way even in Jerusalem. You certainly do not feel this way in New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles. But this tranquility, here we are in one of Israel's most famous cities, and you just feel this quietness. So it's remained that kind of Mecca. But it's much more so on the Shabbat, which is why this Lecha Dodi prayer is recited so beautifully. I should also mention, the most famous museum in Israel is the Israel Museum. It's one of the great museums in the world, one of the great museums of antiquity. They have a collection, this prayer is so beloved by the Jewish people, that they have a collection of 500 different orchestral tunes that have been composed to sing the Lecha Dodi. In my lifetime going to synagogues around the world, I probably have heard, 50 or 60. But apparently 500 exist. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through those 50. So you guys just sort of sit back and relax. It's going to take about 3 or 4 hours. Afterwards, we're going to have lunch. That's the, who recognizes that? They have also put it that. What's that called?
Green Sleeves.
It's called Green Sleeves. It was composed by Henry VIII. It's really a Christmas song.